Toma. I'm doing another video today about fractions. I hope that you watched my last two videos that introduced us to what fractions were and how we can describe them, because we're going to be able to practice some more today. So these kind of have word problems that go along with fractions. So I'm going to read this first one as this is our example, and then we will be able to practice some more towards the end of the video. So this says that there are two sandwiches that are the same size. Each sandwich is divided into fourths. So right away, I can underline that, and remember, fourths is 4. It says, but the sandwiches are cut differently. So how might the two sandwiches be cut? So the first step that I need to do is figure out how the sandwiches could be cut. So over here, I have two different ways to show my 4 parts. So I still have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And over here, I still have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you observe both of these squares, both of their parts are equal. And remember, when we divide up a whole, they need to be able to be divided up to have equal parts. So I have over here my 2 squares to represent my 2 sandwiches, because in my word problem it says there's 2 sandwiches. So in order for me to be able to solve that, I need to know, okay, there's 2 sandwiches. So I can represent those by drawing 2 squares. And then it says they are the same size. So that's why my squares are the same size. And it says that each sandwich is divided up into fourths, but they are cut differently. So that's why in my first square, I've cut it up and down and side to side. And in my second square, it's cut by using diagonals. So they're cut differently, but they both have equal parts. Okay, now over here, we have some more word problems. So that's what we will be practicing today, is some word problems that go along with fractions. So we have, Marquise has 2 square sheets of paper that are the same size. He wants to cut each sheet into halves. So I'm just going to underline that right away because I know halves means 2. Okay, it says, what are the 2 different ways that he can cut the sheets of paper? So I have my 2 squares over here because it says that he has 2 square sheets of paper. So I would just make 2 squares that are the same size. And he cuts each sheet into halves, 2 parts, but he's cut them differently. So over here, he cut them diagonally. And over here, he cut it right across, side to side. Another way I will show you that you could have also done it is if I just drew my square, I could have cut it up and down. And that could also be my 2 parts. Okay, over here I have, Shanice has 2 pieces of cloth that are the same size. She needs to divide up each piece into thirds. So just going to underline that. I know thirds is 3. And it says, what are the 2 different ways that she can divide up the pieces of cloth? So in my first rectangle, she's cut it up into 3 parts. So we have 1, 2, 3. She cut it up and down, as you could see here, up and down. And in my second shape over here, she's also cut it up into 3 equal parts, but she's just cut it from side to side. But there's still 3 parts and they're all equal. Okay, over here, this is telling me that Max has square pizzas that are the same size. What are two different ways that he can divide up the pizza into fourths? Remember, fourths mean 4. So over here in this square, so remember we have 2 squares because it says he has square pizzas that are the same size. And we're asking for 2 different ways. So we're asking for 2 different ways. So that's why we have our 2 squares over here. So in my first square, we're just going to label my 4 parts because it's asking for fourths. And he's cut it over here diagonally. So as you can see, it's diagonal. And in my second square, because remember it's asking for 2 ways, label my parts. He cut it up and down and side to side. And both of these ways show 4 equal parts. These are not the only 2 right answers. There could be more. Another way to cut up a square could have been all up and down. So you could have labeled that 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you could have also done all side to side and get your 4 parts. As long as they are 4 parts and they're all equal, then there could be different answers. So over here, these 2 that were provided are not just the only 2 answers. The ones I showed over here in the right are also correct answers as well. Okay, this next one says that Leah has 2 pieces of paper that are the same size. What are the 2 different ways that she can divide up the pieces of paper into halves? So remember, halves means 2, and we have 2 pieces of paper. So over here, she's cut it up and down, get our 2 equal parts. And over here, she's cut it side to side to get our 2 equal parts. So these are the 2 ways to show halves, which are 2 parts, 2 equal parts. So we're going to do some more practice. This problem says Mr. Rivera has 2 small trays of pasta that are the same size. What are 2 different ways that he can cut the pasta into fourths? So right away, I'm just going to underline the fourths, and I know that that means 4. So he has 2 small trays of pasta, and that's why I have my 2 squares over here to represent the trays of pasta. And I have to divide them up into fourths, but they have to be different. So I'm going to do this one up and down and side to side and label my parts, my 4 equal parts. And then over here, I will have them all going side to side. So to have my 4 equal parts. And remember, those are not the only 2 answers. I could have also done all up and down like this to get my 4 equal parts. Or I could have also done diagonals as well to get my 4 equal parts. So it's not just that there's only 2 ways and that's it. There could be more ways. It's not that they all have to be up and down and side to side, or they all have to be drawn in this way or in this way. Either or of these would work. Okay, let's go to our next one. Our next one says Erin has 2 ribbons that are the same size. What are 2 different ways she can divide up the ribbons into thirds? It's going to underline my thirds. That means 3. So I need to divide them up into thirds. So I have my 2 rectangles here to represent my 2 ribbons. They're the same size, but they're cut differently. So for this one, I'm going to cut it up and down like this and label my parts, my 1, 2, and 3. And then over here, I'm going to cut it from side to side or divide it. So my 1, 2, and 3. So these are 2 ways, both different, but both give me 3 equal parts. And then my other problem says Brandon has 2 pieces of toast that are the same size. What are 2 different ways that he can divide up the pieces of toast into halves? Halves is 2. So I can go up and down like this, label my parts. I can go across and label my parts. And remember, just like over here, I can also do it this way, where they're all, I can just cut it up and down, or I can cut it diagonal, or, well, that would only be it for 2. So another one for here, I could just show you. I could also have it be diagonal like that and do my 1 and 2. So remember, there isn't just one answer and that's it. There's different ways that you can cut up or divide up a whole shape to give you equal parts. But just remember, they have to be divided up into equal parts. They cannot be unequal with each other. So the purpose of this video was that sometimes we will get word problems that are associated with fractions. And if we are able to identify halves means 2, and thirds means 3, and fourths means 4, and when we are asked to divide up a shape into either a half or a third or a fourth, then we know how to do that because we're able to identify that. So just like these word problems, they are asking for different ways of how to show how shapes can be cut into halves or into thirds or into fourths. This just gives you some more practice to that, and just to introduce you on how you can do that. And you will be able to practice all of these new skills that we learned about this week. And by practicing more, you'll become more familiar with this new topic of fractions.